But, you know, like I said, it happens, and hopefully some kids can learn from it, but just don't get caught.
I'm down to dunk.
And I'm down to dunk.
I'm down to dunk.
This is J-Dub, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Lindy Waters, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Mike Muscala, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Jay Will, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Kenneth Williams, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Lou Dort, and I'm down to dunk.
We say this is Lou Dort, and I'm down to Dort.
This is Lou Dort, and I'm down to Dort.
Cracklin Oat Bran?
Have you had Cracklin Oat Bran?
No,
No. Okay.
but it's healthy.
You a big oat brand guy?
I'm a big Oat Bran guy.
Okay.
I think I would switch it with Fruity Pebbles.
Okay, eat faster. Don't put as much in the bowl.
Do you have a gallon of milk I can also take home?
You don't have milk at home?
One cinnamon toast.
Okay.
Crunch. Yeah. Cereal is great. Yeah.
Welcome to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schlecht. We're part of the Athletic Podcast Network. With me, as always, on Wednesdays, I'm a good friend, Alex Speers. Alex, what's up?
Hi, Andrew.
Hello. And hardly ever, maybe never, before with us on Wednesdays is my guy, Kyle Boone from CBS Sports. Kyle covers college basketball, the draft. He's actually in Chicago right now at the Combine. Kyle, thanks for joining the show.
Hello, and first time with all three of us on the podcast. That's correct.
It's wonderful. This is
Love
so
it.
great. So did you go to the lottery last night?
I did go to the lottery last night.
So were you in the back room or were you at the show?
I was in the room where it happened.
Oh my gosh, tell us everything. Tell us everything we need to know.
Oh my gosh, Peter John Holt just stole the show. It's fantastic. I mean, just like I talked to him afterwards because he had a short little media scrum where he fielded some questions, and this checked out based off how things went. But you know, like Mark Tatum opens the envelopes and he gets to the number 2 pick. The Hornets are the number 2 pick, right? And he sees the Hornets logo and immediately starts celebrating because he knows by process of elimination that the Spurs have won the number 1 pick. And so he's very much woo girling on stage. Let's go. And then a woo. And it was fantastic. And he had to apologize to Mark Williams, who was the Hornets representative afterwards, saying that, he thought he might have got some spittle on him, but could not contain his excitement. I mean, it was the first words that he had on ESPN was like, I might faint. And it wasn't anything about Victor Wembanyama or winning the lottery. It's just like, I'm going to pass out. Like, I'm so excited. So that was, to me, like kind of the highlight of the night, because whoever's going to win the lottery, right, was going to be really excited. But I mean, just to see him, just completely lose control. Like, he probably blacked out for a second. He was just so excited to win, one of the most coveted prospects in a long time.
Well, I was telling Andrew, like, I remember watching the 2003 draft lottery when LeBron went to the Cavs, but like back then there just wasn't the media coverage. There wasn't the social media. Yeah. So it like the whole idea of Memphis only keeping their pick if they had gotten the number 1 pick back in 2003, that would have been such a huge deal if they fall to number 2 nowadays. But now it's just kind of something that like you kind of forget. And so it was cool to have this moment where there's this clear generational star. And even as a fan of a team that didn't have a good chance to jump up with the Thunder, I was stressed all day. Because it felt like this momentous event in the history of the league. If this guy really is a generational prospect on the level of a LeBron or right below LeBron. And I was just nervous the entire day because there are teams that I don't want him to go to. And there were teams that I'd be okay with. And so when I saw, for me, it was when I saw the Rockets at 4. Yeah, that was when I let out my big whoop, because I was like, okay, at least he's not going to the Rockets. Yeah. And honestly, the way it ended up, I'm fine with. I have no beef with the Spurs. And, for a bunch of reasons, they seem like a great fit. But yes, I was very nervous in a way I wasn't expecting to be, since like I never really thought the Thunder were going to jump up.
Yeah. I didn't either. Yeah, I felt I don't know that I felt nervous. I just kind of felt certain that they were going to be at 12. I just was like kind of resided.
Yeah.
They're going to be at 12. That's the way that it's going to be. But people are still excited. Like people are in my mentions like all day. Like I'm pretty sure they're going to get the number 1 pick. I just haven't. It's like cool. So the Thunder stay at 12. I feel like there are good options for the Thunder there. The Thunder have picked at 12 before, and it's worked out pretty well for them.
Decent.
It's pretty interesting because, and Joe Masato pointed this out, that they picked Nick Collison at 12. 10 years later, they pick Steven Adams at 12. And then 10 years later, they get this other 12th pick, which is just so weird. Just like so bizarre. But
so that skips over J-Dub?
Skips over J-Dub. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate because he would be a nice progression along that line.
So they're obviously going to draft a big white guy at this spot, which is what history is telling us.
So Grady Dick looks like our option in that range.
The guy.
I'm in.
Kyle, just looking at like different mock drafts and kind of where consensus is on this draft, who at 12 do you think makes sense for the Thunder?
I'm happy to report I might be a Buffkin boy.
Yes.
Oh, really?
I might be a Buffkin boy.
Yes.
And Andrew might be talking me into it. That's not who I have in my latest mock draft, but I can see it. Would make a lot of sense. It feels like OKC, the way they've drafted, they really prioritize guys who are smart, who can play multiple positions. He's a really good playmaker. He's a really good passer. He's a very gifted scorer. And I think would check a lot of boxes. Me personally, like being from Oklahoma, I'm not a huge Thunder fan, I wouldn't say, because I try to be, I try to take out some of my biases. But I do think I would like to see them draft a shooter.
Yeah.
So like a Jordan Hawkins or a Grady Dick, to me, would, from a roster construction perspective, make a lot of sense. That being said, that really would not jive with how OKC has drafted over the years under Sam Presti. Now, if Grady Dick is high on their board and he's there at number 12, then sure, I think you have to go that route. But that to me, I think is going to be interesting. Jordan Hawkins, Grady Dick, two guys that I think I would prioritize personally just because of fit. That being said, if you're not prioritizing fit and you're just trying to get the most talented player, which I think OKC is going to try to do, they maybe look a different direction, a Nick Smith Jr., Keontae George, Bryce Sensabaugh, Leonard Miller, somewhere along those lines.
So I'm looking at the mock draft that you put out last night on CBSSports.com. Do you feel like there's a drop-off at some point, not necessarily in terms of talent, but in terms of, I would be very surprised if these guys fell below this range? Like, I'm kind of looking at around 9, like pick 9, where you have Taylor Hendricks. Does that feel like a cutoff point where you'd be surprised if any of those top 9 fell below there?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, I think Taylor Hendricks, his range is somewhere between like 5 and 13. There's definitely guys in like that 5 to end of lottery range where I feel like they kind of are interchangeable. Like I have Keontae George a little bit higher in my rankings, but I'm aware now that consensus is that he's like maybe late lottery, late teens guy now. So, and same with Cason Wallace, who, Kentucky guards continually underperforming in college and just going on to be stars in the NBA. He could be next in line. He's a great defender, good playmaker. Anthony Black, Nick Smith Jr. Like there's a lot of guys that I think are in that, mid to late lottery range where you could kind of put them in any order and it would not totally surprise me. I'm sure we'll get maybe some clarity on that in the coming weeks. And I think the combine this week will be really important. But to me, like the drop off probably beyond the Thompson twins and then maybe Taylor Hendricks and Jarris Walker, like in that range, I think there is kind of a tier break.
Okay.
So you do have Jordan Hawkins going to the Thunder in your mock draft. Thoughts on, obviously he's a really good shooter, can
Yeah.
relocate, is kind of a madman. It's not hard to see how he would fit with this team, with all the great passers. I want to know what you think about his size, and then about his ability to defend at like the NBA level.
I think his defense would be fine. I know that's kind of maybe a sticking point or something that I think people will want to dive into, but I think his size is pretty good. Positionally, I think he'll be able to match up pretty well. Where he fits in the NBA, like this is a guy who I don't think he quite profiles as someone who can create. You look at kind of his profile, and he's like a really good shooter in terms of being, like a spot up shooter, catch and shoot guy. Synergy had him in the 97th percentile last season in spot up shooting situations, which is really, really good. And if you watch him with UConn, it's like he's very, I hesitate to say it because I don't want to invoke just crazy names, but he's very Curry-like in the way that he can create on offense. He just is a madman, as you said. Like he sprints around the court, just going crazy. He gets a ton of cardio in. He works really hard to kind of get himself open. I think there's probably some limitations to his game offensively in terms of how he's going to get offense. Like he's a guy who you're going to have to run sets for. He's going to have to run off of screens, run around the floor and get open. He's not a guy who I think will be like a dribble shooter off the dribble creating offense. But for what he does at a very, very high level. So, again, if you're thinking like, I want to draft a star at number 12, maybe Jordan Hawkins isn't that guy. But if you're drafting for fit and someone who can be kind of a really good mesh with what the Thunder currently have, would make a lot of sense for sure.
So I wanted to go back to Kobe Buffkin because am I correct that you previously were maybe a little bit lower on him than someone like Andrew, a big Buffkin boy, of course? We've been so positive about Kobe Buffkin. I would actually like to hear the negative, or not the negative case, but like the downside case for Kobe Buffkin. Why might you have had him lower on your board than someone like Andrew?
Yeah, it's probably more of like I didn't catch up quick enough with the market. He started the season, slower than maybe you would expect for someone of his pedigree. And Jett Howard was like playing, significantly more minutes. He was more involved in Michigan's offense than Kobe Buffkin. But down the stretch, like Buffkin really got involved with Michigan, kind of emerged as kind of their go-to playmaker. And that's probably more anything related to Buffkin. Like this is a guy who I think probably I didn't catch up quick enough with the market, and Andrew was clearly setting the propaganda narrative well ahead of time. And so yeah, like it just a really good like secondary playmaker, really good guard. He can be a good spot up shooter, good shooting touch, good finisher, like kind of a slender frame, maybe a little bit concerning about how he'll hold up defensively, but like his defense is like pretty good from what I've seen, and I think the numbers kind of bear that out as well. So yeah, I'm here to be a Buffkin boy. I'm here to kind of set the propaganda narrative. We're back, baby.
Yeah, he is really skinny. That would kind of be the thing that I think I would worry about with him. But he's so well rounded compared to a lot of these other guys, and that's kind of the thing with this draft. After Scoot Henderson, Brandon Miller, is like, oh man, there are like glaring weaknesses in like almost every single player from there on. And then you kind of get to Buffkin, you're like, I don't know, he kind of does everything. And maybe the concern too would be, okay, what is he going to do at an elite level in the NBA?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess there's definitely a chance that he gets to the NBA and he can't do anything at an elite level. He's just like an okay player where he's just kind of a bench guy that kind of comes in and plays 20 minutes a game and at best, and that's kind of what he is. But I think he's got a little bit more shake than that. So I like him a lot. I don't know. He doesn't have elite size for position, which is something the Thunder really like.
Yeah.
Too, which is why you could look at somebody like Brandon Miller at that spot. Or not Brandon Miller, Leonard Miller. Sorry. You would definitely.
That would be cool if he fell.
Heck yeah.
If he falls. Yeah, Leonard Miller at that spot, who does have really good size for position.
Yeah.
Do you have his combine measurements handy?
I don't.
Who, Leonard Miller?
Mm-hmm.
I can get him real quick.
Okay, because it was it's kind of insane, kind of unexpected. Buffkin too measured a little bit taller than I thought he would as well. So, and he's a really young sophomore, so he still could be growing from where he measured at the beginning of the year. But yeah, Leonard Miller is probably gonna measure like in shoes like 6'11", 6'10".
I'd say 6'10". Yeah, that'd be my guess.
And like good length. He's got great size. I don't know. What do you think about his game?
Okay, can I play devil's advocate here? I feel like Thunder fans really get attached to big combo forwards who are lefties.
Yeah.
Like everyone got really excited for Darius Baisley, right? Because the potential was there. Like he's a very highly touted recruit.
Yeah.
Can be kind of, a playmaking wing. I feel like Leonard Miller might be a fancy Darius Baisley. Like very long, great size.
The worst thing you could have possibly said.
And I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I do like Leonard Miller.
Well, you are the devil.
I might be the devil. He's got great touch, finish around the rim. Like his positional size is great. He feels like, again, cliche, he feels like what the Thunder would like in a draft prospect, what they have typically like prioritized. I think the offense is still maybe a little bit raw, but I don't know. I'm just playing devil's advocate. I think there's probably some other fits that may be better at the number 12 spot, but if the Thunder looked this direction and went this path, like historically, that would just be like, yeah, okay, of course, we should have seen that coming.
So his measurements 6'9" without shoes, 212 pounds, 7'2" wingspan.
Okay.
I guess the reason I wouldn't be as worried, at least about the Bays comp, is because from what I'm reading, Leonard Miller was a very good finisher this year, and that was one of the big issues with Bays for years and years and years, that he just like couldn't figure out the mechanics of a layup consistently. Like every time he drove to the rim, it always looked different, and he would throw up these wild shots. I know that Leonard Miller similarly like creates his own path on the way to the rim as well, that he has kind of like a weird style. But it was reassuring to see that he was a really good finisher in the Ignite.
Yeah, and I think like his playmaking ability, like the way that he can legitimately be like a playmaker and like pressure the rim as an attacking combo forward who's like pushing 6'10" is very, very interesting. Like in a nutshell, you just kind of the bull case for Leonard Miller, like this guy who could, if his ceiling hits a ceiling, he could be a really, really useful piece for an NBA rotation. So, like I'm not out on Leonard Miller by any stretch. I think I have him top 20 on the CBS big board right now. So, I've been high on him for a long time, and it felt like last year he had some momentum as a potential lottery pick too before, deciding to run it back and do one more year. So I'm excited to watch him this week. I think he's already had a pretty solid week at the combine, just from what I've seen in drills, and the way he carries himself, I think is really impressive. I stood next to him and I just had to like crane my neck so hard because this dude is so stinking tall. So I think he'll probably have a good week, and I think he's probably going to be a guy who's rising up big boards.
We mentioned his measurements. Has there been anyone else at the combine so far who has had a surprising measurement, like either someone who was taller than everyone expected or shorter than everyone expected?
Not height that stands out to me. A couple of vertical jumps surprised me. Julian Phillips had like a 43-inch vertical jump, which he's a very explosive athlete, but him just like clearly being the most explosive athlete at the combine was pretty surprising and impressive. Brandon Podziemski, Santa Clara guard, had like a almost 40-inch vertical, and so that was kind of impressive. Stood out to me because he's someone who I think people see as a combination, playmaking, scoring guard who maybe isn't the best athlete, and him having like a great vertical jump kind of feels like it answers some questions about his athleticism. So excited to watch him too this week. I know we're big Santa Clara fans on this podcast, so I think he has potentially a good week ahead.
Yeah, he could be somebody that's there at 37 for OKC.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about his game.
Yeah, I talked to him earlier this week, so I'm trying to work on kind of a story about Podziemski, but this is a guy who was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, Mr. Wisconsin basketball, signed with Illinois out of high school, and signed with Illinois after 2 fifth-year seniors decided to come back. So entered a situation that was really not conducive to him producing right away. Jalen Williams helps recruit him to Santa Clara, says, hey, like they'll give you the keys of the car. They'll let you drive as fast as you want. And so he decides to go to Santa Clara, has a great season at Santa Clara, is actually the WCC co-player of the year, along with Gonzaga's Drew Timme. And now is on the radar. I think is a potential like late first, early second guy. He mostly focused on baseball growing up. He played a little bit of football. He was a safety. When I talked to his dad earlier this week, he told me that like he always tried to, when he was playing basketball, tried to play him up. So he was playing with older guys because he wanted his son to fail. He wanted his son to go back and really focus on baseball because he felt like baseball was like his bread and butter. He was very gifted as a pitcher. He was a really good hitter. And so that's kind of the backstory to him. He talked a little bit about how he learned playing basketball, watching video games. That's kind of how he learned to form his jump shot. He's a lefty. He's very crafty. A combo guard who I think can similar. He may be like a discount Kobe Buffkin, like pretty good size. I think defensively he'll hold up pretty well. Combination scoring guard who can do a little playmaking and scoring. His shooting, I think, is really elite, and I'm really excited kind of about that potential and what he can bring from that aspect.
He's also a crazy rebounder for just like some like 6'5" guy out there, which makes him pretty interesting for this team because I think the Thunder want to play small, and like the only way that you can really do that successfully is if you have guys that are like 6'8" and under that are really good rebounders, and they have some of those guys already. But he kind of, he fits that. I don't know if he'll be around by 37, but he definitely ticks a lot of boxes there.
Jalen Wilson, I know we're not talking, I don't want to jump and change subjects. Jalen Wilson from Kansas would make a lot of sense too. One of the best players in the Big 12 last season, has always been like a tremendous rebounder for his position. He's like somewhere around 6'8". Kansas mostly played like small ball lineups with him last season. They really didn't have like a traditional big man like Kansas normally does. And Kansas was awesome last season. Their offense was great. He's a guy who can create second chance opportunities. To me, if OKC is wanting to play, kind of some small ball lineups, he would make a lot of sense. I think he would be there in the 30s. Someone who is probably, because he played several seasons in college, is a little bit older. I believe he played 4 seasons at Kansas. And I know like typically older prospects tend to slide. But yeah, the college production profile that he brings, I think is kind of appealing as someone who may, OKC may have their eyes on at 37.
Yeah, I like that too. So, go ahead, Al.
Yeah, so there's a lot of Thunder fans who don't really care where we ended up because we're like, hey, we have all these picks, we can just move up if we really like a guy. Ed About to Dunk asked about that. Could we do some type of consolidation trade to move up? Let's assume that getting up to 2 or 3 would be too rich for Sam Presti. Is there anyone in like that 4 to 10 range that you both really like as a prospect and think would be a really good fit for the Thunder to the point where you'd be willing to give up future assets to move up and try to get them?
Oh yeah, Cam Whitmore to me. This is a guy who I have as the number 4 in this class, and I think there's not really consensus beyond the top 3. Like, so Victor Wembanyama, clear number 1, Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller, 2 and 3, depends on the order. It gets kind of interesting at number 4, where I would prefer Cam Whitmore, but Amin Thompson from Overtime Elite, Osar Thompson, his twin brother from Overtime Elite, Keontae George, Cason Wallace, Anthony Black, Jarris Walker. All those guys I think could go in some order in like the 4 to 10 range. If Cam Whitmore, for whatever reason, Amin Thompson goes number 4 and then Osar goes number 5, suddenly Cam Whitmore's on the board at number 6. I'm making calls. I'm saying, hey, can we go get Cam Whitmore? Because he's an explosive vertical athlete. He's a guy who I think is a great spot up shooter. He kind of toiled away in obscurity this past season at Villanova because Villanova was kind of really bad, surprisingly really bad. But former 5-star recruit came into college off of a great summer circuit. I believe it was on the FIBA circuit. So I think he's kind of a winning player. He's more of a wing. He's like 6'7", 6'8", great positional size. Will be a good defender in the NBA, and is kind of like, to me, you're looking for someone who can shoot, who you can put next to Giddey and next to SGA. He's definitely that, but he's also a lot more than that, as kind of like a power wing. So to me, if he is somehow able to be acquired, whether you're moving all the way up to number 4 or potentially if he slips a little bit, you're making a call up. That's someone who I think OKC would make a lot of sense with the Thunder and kind of their current roster.
So one of the
pass.
Yeah, I was going to ask, and specifically like the lack of playmaking, has that always been a part of his game, or was that something that was more, highlighted at Villanova?
Yeah, you're saying like he wasn't much of a playmaker at Villanova? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, like just the lack of passing, the lack of assists, was that always a downside, a weakness of his game, or was that just something because he got the keys at Villanova that popped there? Yeah,
he's always like, to me, I view him as kind of like a slashing wing. He can make some plays, but that's not like his game. They put him on the ball a lot last season at Villanova, and I think that was kind of like to highlight some of his strengths that maybe he's flashed at times. So his assist rate last season's like pretty bad, 6.4%. So yeah, that was actually really bad, and his turnover rate was like 15%. So that's not good. I feel like that Villanova team in general, like if you look at the context of that team, there wasn't a ton of really good weapons around him, so that may have played some role. I don't see him as much of a playmaker, to be honest. He's more of like a slasher, someone who can be kind of a catch and shoot weapon, who has great size and can play maybe multiple positions. He's very powerful. He's very strong. I think can be like a multi-positional defender. But the playmaking is probably one area where he probably needs to improve a little bit.
What do you think about his 3-point shot? I think he shot 34% this past year, and then he's like 70% from the line. Do you think that he can be a above average shooter at the NBA level?
I think so. I'm pulling up his catch and shoot numbers now.
Mm-hmm.
I think the 3-point shot was good. It was maybe not what you would hope for from like a definite top 5, top 10 pick. But to me, I think what he showed as kind of a catch and shoot weapon was really impressive. Synergy had him in the 84th percentile as a catch and shoot weapon last season, which is by their ratings excellent. So that's pretty good as a true freshman in college playing in a major conference, and especially given the attention that he had with Villanova last season. I'm pretty impressed with that. I think his playmaking, his finishing in particular, I think was pretty good when he was attacking the basket. So that dimension that he brings to the table as a slasher, someone who can attack the rim and be kind of an above the rim player, someone who's super athletic, is very appealing to me. And again, like going back to what OKC kind of prioritizes and really values in prospects, Cam Whitmore seems to very competitive, checks a ton of boxes. I really like kind of his profile and what he can be in the NBA.
Yeah. My biggest question is that the Thunder just want like rhythm players that can make decisions with the basketball.
Yeah.
And maybe he has more of that than what he showed at Villanova, but just from what I've watched there, I feel like he is probably a better fit for another franchise, just because like the Thunder very much prioritize, being able to make a play with the ball. Yeah. And so I've kind of discounted him some, and I need to go back and watch again, just because a lot of times if I don't see that initially, I'm like, okay, he's probably not a Thunder guy. But also the Thunder may be at a point where they're just like, hey, we need a play finisher, and I don't have direct knowledge if that's true or not, but he definitely would be interesting. And Josh Giddey would be forced to learn how to throw lobs. He'd be forced to learn how to with Cam Whitmore out there, because Cam can get up. It's insane.
Yeah.
Of the guys in your top 10 that you mocked, who do you have the biggest question marks about? Like you still have them ranked highly as a prospect, but you just have serious questions about their long-term ability.
My hot take is I maybe have some questions for Brandon Miller.
Okay.
I don't think I'm going to go there though. Case and Wallace, I think, is probably the one that just immediately stands out to me. He had like the opportunity to really like seize control of that Kentucky team with Xavier Wheeler kind of ailing throughout the season with injuries, and didn't quite take over in the way that maybe a lot of people had hoped as kind of like their lead playmaker. So I think he's like a great defensive playmaker. Cason Wallace is like maybe the most NBA ready perimeter defender in this class. Pretty good size. I have some questions about what his offense will be at the NBA level. Not entirely bought in on his shot, but I think the defense is like such a great foundational piece that still I have him in the top 10, even if I think there's some questions about like projecting him to the NBA level.
I apologize if you're live on the stream. You may have seen my wife come in here and feed me a bite of ice cream. She got her this Ninja creamy thing for her birthday. You guys heard of this?
No.
Basically, it'll turn like what you do. So what we did is we made a protein shake. You put it in the freezer, and then you put it in this machine, and it will make it into like ice cream, like legit ice cream.
And how was it?
It was delightful.
Yeah.
It was delightful.
It's so early in the morning, Andrew. It's
it really
early
is
for ice cream. Oh,
it's like not even 10 there.
I haven't even had coffee yet, and you're already like skipping to ice cream. This is unbelievable.
That's about how it goes over here.
So we talked about the potential of moving up, and obviously one of the key components of that would likely be trading one of their many 2024 draft picks. At Mr. Quimba wanted to know, is next year's draft class stinky? And how does that impact our ability to trade up? What are your early thoughts on next year's draft class? Is it really as bad as everyone is saying?
I don't think it's as bad as everyone's saying. I'll fully just be transparent here. I'm not totally abreast with the 2024 class. I'm so knee deep in the 2023 class that I have not fully prepared for it. So, in general, I feel like I am very much a fan of trading future picks to try and get players now, because you get more swings now. Kind of how those guys are going to pan out. And most of the time, future picks that you have, depending on protections, like a lot of those are fake first, right? They're late first round picks, maybe don't have protections. I'm not sure. So yeah, like I'm a fan of if you can trade some future assets and move up into this class. I like this class. I've already talked myself into like 35 guys. So I would be a fan of that.
So a fake trade that I came up with is the Thunder trading the 12th pick and then to the Jazz, and also the Jazz's pick next year, which will be top 10 protected, for the 9th pick. And so just like moving up a few slots, would that be worth it? Is there value moving up from 12 to 9? You're basically giving up an additional pick to do that?
Would not do that. I don't
Okay.
think I would do that. Only because I feel confident, maybe irrationally so, in OKC's ability to find a player at number 12 that would be as valuable as what they could get at number 9. And now maybe that's not the case. Maybe there's a tier break in how OKC views this class. But the difference between number 9, who I have as Anthony Black on the CBS big board, and number 12, who I have as Nick Smith Jr. Okay, maybe it's marginal and maybe it's a lot, but I'm not sure it's worth like a future first round pick for it. So, yeah, like in general, I think unless you have a ton of conviction about who you want and you want to go get your guy, I think I would probably lean towards keep your assets, don't consolidate, at least not yet.
So you mentioned Cam Whitmore. Are there any other players that would be worth trading up for? Like who, like in like the 5 to 10 range? I think there probably would be teams that would be willing to move that pick. I think Dallas is one, whether that's for a player or multiple picks. Maybe even Utah, like I mentioned, would be maybe willing to do that. Maybe even Orlando, since they've got multiple picks already. Who would be worth it that you think is like a tier above everybody else?
So in that range, first of all, I will say Portland. I feel like that pick could potentially be available. So would at least kick the tires around and be like, hey, what's it going to take? Can we move up and get a Brandon Miller or a Scoot Henderson? That would be kind of my first priority. In the 5 to 10 range, I actually think like either of the Thompson twins are pretty interesting to me. Amen is, 6'7". He profiles as kind of like a combo guard. He's really good as a playmaker, really smooth. Both of the Thompson twins are crazy athletes, like above the rim, can finish above the rim. So both of those guys to me would make a lot of sense. Amen is the guy who I think like NBA talent evaluators see as a better playmaker, but Asar actually had a better assist rate this past season. I think his assists per game were 6.1, whereas Amen was 5.9. So they're both really good playmakers, and I think check boxes as in terms of like what OKC values as someone who is not a record scratcher, can help keep the offense moving, has a high IQ, very athletic, good positional size. I'm sure OKC fans probably want like, maybe a big man or something, like just based off how the roster is constructed. I'm not entirely sure like what they're most fiending for, but the Thompson twins I think would make a lot of sense, especially with kind of how OKC's current roster is.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Asar Thompson. I think that he could really help this team, and he provides like upside that other players in that range don't. A lot of Oklahoma City fans are very much bought in on Taylor Hendricks.
Yes. Okay.
So tell us about Hendricks and his like potential fit in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, I like it. That's a guy who like I think people probably want to write off because he was really good at the mid-major level, was really productive at UCF, and maybe that's not nice calling UCF a mid-major, but was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. Was really good, surprisingly so, this past season with UCF, kind of as a combination forward who has great size. He's a really good scorer. Shot like nearly 40% from the 3-point line, and to me is almost like he has the size of a power forward, but almost profiles as like a power wing, like a really good, strong defender who I think can space the floor, can add some scoring. He is okay as a playmaker, but his defense, his length, I think is kind of his best asset. And then you have the 3-point shot that I think is kind of cherry on top of kind of what his profile is.
I was just looking up something about Bobby Clintman. from Wake Forest, because this is the season of scuttlebutt, of rumors, of guys positioning themselves to try to get to the teams they want to get to. And Bobby Klintman, who you didn't even have in your first round mock, all of a sudden comes out and says, "Hey, I'm not doing the combine. I'm out of here." Which, of course, everyone immediately thinks of a promise. He must have a promise from someone. And when Thunder fans hear promise, we instantly think about the Thunder. So it must be that the Thunder promised Bobby Klintman. What do you think? Like, what range of this draft do you think in this first round? Because clearly he must have gotten a first round promise if he's going to bow out of the combine. What range of the draft do you think he would have been willing to do that for?
I think it probably, to me, it's probably top 35, like where you have a guarantee in your contract. So that just barely excludes the Thunder at 37. 6'10", he's a pretty good 3-point shooter, very raw. And I think, but very exciting. Someone who I think has been kind of a late riser during this draft process. I don't have him in my first round mock right now. I think I have him like 33 on the big board, so just outside of the first round. But I see the potential. Like, I understand why people are excited when someone who's like 6'9", 6'10", who, similar to who we just talked about, Taylor Hendricks, profiles as kind of like a major power wing / combo forward. I think is really exciting. Like, the positional size is great. A lot of NBA franchises value kind of that and think that can be like kind of a foundational asset for a prospect. That to me is kind of his selling point in a nutshell. Like, the counting stats aren't amazing. He was like 5 points per game, 4 rebounds per game at Wake Forest. So you're like, Taylor Hendricks clears. He's definitely the better prospect because he was putting up better numbers. But I think a lot of NBA teams are projecting out 3-4 years what they can be. And Klintman, I think, what he showed and his athleticism, his length is very exciting. Like, long term, I think he could be a really interesting player.
So other players that would be like considered Thunder guys, Rayon Rupert is definitely somebody that is circled. I mean, he basically did the whole Ousmane Dieng thing. Like, he just was Ousmane Dieng's shadow, essentially. Like, back in like high school with him in France, and then over to the New Zealand Breakers. And I don't know. What do you think about him? What do you think about him at 12? Is that too rich for a player like that? Tell us what you know about Rupert.
Yeah, 12 to me would be too rich for Rupert, but I would have said the same thing about J-Dub last year at number 12. So, like, what the heck do I know? He's 6'7", still a teenager, 19 years old, comes from New Zealand Breakers. To me, I think he's more of like a project, kind of in the similar mold as Dieng, where I see like the tools. I see the upside. I think he has pretty good like passing, playmaking vision. The shot is, I think, a work in progress probably, but the defensive foundation that he brings at 6'7", the positional size. I think he's a pretty smart player, kind of from what I've seen, and it can be kind of difficult to scout the NBL. But I do like kind of his profile, and I think probably his range in this draft. If the Thunder really like him, it wouldn't totally surprise me if they took him at 12. To me, I think his range is more like 15 to 30 in this draft. Like, I think he's probably a first rounder, but I'm not entirely sure. Like, it'll be top half of the first round.
Okay.
So one of our listeners at Pile of Bricks wanted to ask about a prospect, and tell me if I have his name wrong, because I thought I was saying it right this whole time, and then I heard it differently, and so now I'm confused. Bilal Coulibaly.
Oh, yeah.
Did I say it correctly?
Oh, absolutely. You nailed it.
Oh, okay.
That was great. Way to go.
I heard it much differently yesterday, and it completely threw my brain off.
Who did you hear it from?
I don't want to say what podcast it was, okay? But I just heard it said in a way that really messed with my head.
Say
Okay.
it. Say it.
What do you think about him as a prospect and possible draft riser? Because it's likely that one of these guys that is currently mocked in the back half of this first round is going to jump up into the lottery. His name has been brought up as a potential draft riser. What do you think about him?
Yeah. So Koulibaly is someone who plays for Mets 92. For people who don't know, he's Mets 92 is, by the way, Victor Wembanyama's team. And so like he's been playing with Wembanyama for most of the season. And I think in part that has helped him because like obviously there's a ton of attention on Wembanyama games and Mets 92. So that has helped. He's always been like a really toolsy guy. He's, like a 6'8" wing. He's very long, very athletic, and but has been kind of a little bit more raw. From what I've seen the last month plus, it feels like he's definitely, and maybe this is me ascribing a narrative, but it does feel like he is a bit of a draft riser because he's still very young. He's playing with a lot of confidence with his shot. He's shooting more 3-pointers, and I think his shot looks pretty good. He's really confident, kind of attacking the basket, and man, imagine playing next to Victor Wembanyama and like having confidence to go and like just say, "Hey, Victor, you go stand in the corner." Like that is that's wild to think about. And so Koulibaly to me, like I think is pretty interesting as someone who, I think is probably a late riser, could end up in the first round. I don't have a great read on where he will go in this draft, but yeah, like if he's like a late lottery guy by the time the draft rolls around, that wouldn't totally surprise me. He's very toolsy. I think long-term, very exciting prospect.
So Grady Dick is somebody that I think has intrigued Thunder fans for a long time just because he's tall and can shoot. What else does he bring to the table? And we haven't mentioned him as like a trade-up guy, but if the Thunder did execute like a trade for that Jazz pick, like we talked about, he'd be somebody that's kind of in that range. Would he be worth something like that? And then maybe just go into outside of tall, can shoot. Like what else do you see in his game?
Yeah. I think possibly. It depends on where what the price is to trade up for him, obviously, but somewhere in that 8 to 12 range would make a lot of sense, I think, for Dick. People see him and they think he's a white guy and he can shoot.
Yeah.
And but he's a lot more than that. Like he's actually like really athletic, which is a little bit jarring. He has great size. He's like, I think he might almost be 6'9". So like his profile is really exciting. His shooting is great. I think he can be a really good transition player. Not entirely sold on kind of his playmaking ability in terms of being able to attack and create from that perspective, but the athleticism and kind of the way he moves and his movement shooting, I think is really exciting. I think a lot of people see Jordan Hawkins and Grady Dick kind of in the same tier in terms of like they're shooters who maybe will be shooters in the NBA, maybe not much more. Dick, to me, I see as someone who has like more potential to be a little bit more than just a shooter in the NBA. So that's why I have him ranked a little bit higher. I think his long-term potential is a little bit more appealing than, maybe a Hawkins or some of the other kind of specialist shooters in recent years.
So you're at the combine right now.
Yeah.
And one of the parts of the combine is these drills. And so we're getting all the results of these drills. Everyone involved with the draft tells us that these are meaningless, that no one cares about them. You'll see something like I saw yesterday, Amoni Bates apparently did very well in the shooting competition. So like people on Twitter are excited about it. But like, why do we do these? Does anyone ever take them seriously? Has there ever been a drill where you were like, wow, that fundamentally changes the way I thought about this player because of the way they did this one drill?
No, probably not. Probably not. I mean, it's
just for fun. What are we doing?
It's partly for fun, sure. I mean, like, it's definitely a good backdrop to try and meet some people, but also like, people are doing like projections and they need inputs in terms of like measurements, in terms of what their shuttle time is. and their vertical jump and all these different things, so they can kind of compare historically what prospects look like and how maybe they project to the NBA. So like I get it. I'm not entirely sure it's that useful or valuable to me, but I do think like the 5-on-5 aspect, seeing these guys compete in person is valuable. And so like the last time I was at the combine, it's like 4 years ago, but Nick Claxton was someone who stood out to me, and I was like, man, like I think I have him in my first round now. And I like at the time it was like, you're an idiot. Like, why would you do that? And so like it feels like every year, like the scrimmage setting, I think is meaningful, and it allows like you to see kind of how guys stack up against some of the top level competition.
Do you already have the list of who's going to participate in the scrimmages?
I can find it for you.
Because I was just wondering, is there
yeah.
anyone that was surprising? Because I remember like it was a big deal last year when Jalen Williams, J-Dub, participated, or at least it was a big deal after he participated, when everyone was like, oh, this shows a lot of hard work and all that stuff. Like people were very excited about the fact that he participated. Is there anyone like that this year?
Yeah, it's tough because like as of this year, and this may actually be the last year with the new CBA being implemented, but players are not required to participate in the combine. So like Scoot Henderson, Victor Wembanyama, like those dudes, like they're definitely not going to be competing. Here's the teams. Team 1 is Turk Smith, Amari Bailey, Jordan Walsh, Azuolas Tubelis, Adama Sanogo, Seth Lundy, Leonard Miller, Amari Moore, Drew Timme, Kevin Muller, Kevin McCullough, Jazz Gortman, PJ Hall. Team 2, Judah Mintz, Podzimski, Imani Bates, Arthur Kaluma, Ryan Kalkbrenner, Adam Flagler, Jalen Wilson, Grant Nelson, Deron Holmes, Mojave King, Serge Abari Rice, Tosan Ifbam. Team 3 is Mike Miles, Jordan Miller, Julian Strother, Coleman Hawkins, Adam Bona, Jalen Pickett, Ben Shepard, Ricky Council, Tumani Kamara, Tristan Bukachev, Dylan Jones, Johnny Broom, and then the final team, Isaiah Wong, Andre Jackson, Omax Prosper, Dylan Mitchell, Oscar Shibwe, Reese Beekman, Trey Alexander, Jalen Slauson, Terrence Shannon, Kendrick Davis, and Hunter Tyson.
So I would say Leonard Miller being in there,
yeah,
pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think to me probably Leonard Miller is maybe the biggest name who is on that list and competing. Like probably the only one who I'd say confidently is a first round pick who's going to be competing. So
yeah,
that'll be exciting.
Cool. And those start today? Wednesday?
Those start, let's see. Yeah, they start today. They start today.
Cool.
Yeah.
We're going to go to some questions in the chat. Michael Clampett says you got Keontae George as a lotto guy. His shooting motion looks amazing, but defensively, he could use some work. How do you project his NBA role?
It's tough. I like Keontae George a lot, and it's looking more and more like I may be a little too high on him, but combo guard who can score. I think he is a pretty good playmaker and showed that in flashes at Baylor last season. He's like a high volume, low efficiency scorer in terms of his production profile last season at Baylor. So that's a little bit concerning, but again, just a freshman. To me, he profiles as someone who's going to be like a maybe off the bench, like microwave scorer, can be like a chucker in the NBA. I'm not entirely sure he's going to be like a starting NBA guard, but I like his offensive game. There's definitely some holes to his defensive game. I think that could maybe be patched up over time. Some of these young guys, it takes a little while. So, yeah, I'm still high on him. I have him as a lottery pick. I really like Keontae George.
Hoopstock69 wants to know about Imani Bates in the second round.
Sure. If you want. I mean, sure.
His story is so crazy because he was thought of as like the next guy. Like, oh, he's the guy that you tank for, years ago. What? I mean, you can give us like the cliff notes of this, but like what happened?
Yeah, like this is a guy who was compared to Kevin Durant. He was the number one recruit in his class for like multiple years. Everyone thought that the one and done rule would change in part because of him, because he seemed like someone who would make the leap straight from high school to the NBA. He reclassifies his going into his senior season, signs with Memphis, comes out a year early. He has a not very good freshman season at Memphis. In fact, Memphis, like, statistically was better when he was on the shelf and injured. So he came back late in the season, just like wasn't really impactful for that Memphis team, and ends up transferring, goes to Eastern Michigan, which is where he's from. Had a great season at Eastern Michigan, obviously the lower level of competition. His shot selection leaves a lot to be desired. Not entirely sure he's someone who I think like teammates would love to play with. Star potential, I think, for sure, just because the size, the scoring ability is just insane. But yeah, like his shot selection isn't good. I'm not entirely sure he's a very good playmaker. He's kind of like a ball sticker. So that's kind of like where things sit right now. I think he'd be available in the second round. He seems like the opposite of whatever the Thunder are looking for in potential projects, but sure, 37. Why not? Roll the dice.
I'm just putting him in a Rockets jersey. I don't know that the
yes,
second round pick, but he just feels like a Rocket to me.
He does. Imani and Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green. Yes.
I guess
yes,
you haven't been back to the combine since the lottery last night because you're in your hotel room. Because I'm really interested in what people think Portland could potentially get for the third pick, because everything coming out of Portland, like even their email after getting the third pick, was all about building around Dame. Like everything they are communicating, from Dame to like the beat reporters that I follow to the team itself, is saying we are building around Dame. Dame has said he doesn't want to play with like another 19-year-old. He said that explicitly. If Scoot Henderson falls to 3, because I don't know if you saw the quote from Mitch Kupchak, but this morning, let me bring it up because it was a very funny quote for Mitch Kupchak to say about the team that he is in charge of. He said something. Oh, he said that they are good enough now where they don't have to go after best player available. They don't have to prioritize BPA. They can start thinking about fit. He said that in an interview, which is very funny.
They're so screwed. Screwed.
So knowing that, let's say that means that they go for Brandon Miller. Scoot Henderson is available at 3. People have said, if this was a different draft, if Wemby's not there, Scoot is probably a number 1 overall pick. What caliber of player do you think Portland could potentially get back?
Oh, I don't have any idea.
Or maybe I should put it this way. I'm going to give you some players. You tell me if you think it's equal value, like fair value.
Okay. All right.
Joel Embiid.
Oh, no.
You wouldn't do it. Okay.
I would do it. I don't think the Sixers are not trading Joel Embiid.
Oh, that ignore that part. Let's just say these players are available for whatever reason. Is it good enough to trade the future of Scoot Henderson? So yes. Joel Embiid, you'd say yes. Jaylen Brown.
Yes.
Okay. That's kind of like my dividing line, because now we get to like Pascal Siakam.
Yes.
Okay. Karl Anthony Towns.
No.
Okay. Those are like the main names I've heard as just like, if something blows up this summer, those are the big names that could be available. It terrifies me because if I'm a Blazers fan, I have such a high bar for what the player coming back needs to be for me to pass up the idea of Scoot Henderson. And so many stars have to align just for that trade to even be a possibility. I mean, Jaylen Brown could sign that huge extension this summer, and he's off the board. I agree with you that I don't think Philly's going to trade Embiid. So now you are talking about someone in that like Siakam range, and man, it would just be really tough for me. Like, do you view Scoot in that same way? The way that some people are talking about him, whereas he would be the number 1 pick in most, like if Wemby wasn't there in most drafts.
Yeah, I think so. Look, I think it would be short-sighted of Portland to try and trade potentially Scoot Henderson for like a Pascal Siakam, but like I understand it too because you're trying to win now. You're trying to maximize what you have with Damian Lillard, and maybe you take the short-term trade-off for star production right away and trade away a guy who could be a multi-time All-Star and a future lead guy of your franchise. I would not personally do it. If Scoot Henderson fell to number 3, I would just take Scoot Henderson and figure it out. If that upsets Damian Lillard, okay, like you figure it out, do whatever you need to do.
Mhm.
Man, I don't know. It's a really tough spot for Portland, but it sounds like the scuttlebutt is like Portland's going to trade out of this pick because they want to try and get someone who can help win now.
Right.
Would you trade Jalen Williams for the 3rd pick if it was Scoot Henderson there?
I would, yeah. I would prefer to have Jalen Williams.
What about one other name I thought of? Mikal Bridges. What if Brooklyn offered him for the 3rd pick? Because I actually heard Sam Vecini, I think, came up with an idea of Bridges and Nick Claxton for the 3rd pick. And I was like, man, that is pretty.
That is
pretty juicy.
Yeah, there's juice there.
That's like a win-win, right? Portland gets kind of some win now pieces. I mean, which side would you take? I think I would probably take the Scoot side or Brandon Miller, depending on who's there. But
yeah,
I'd probably take the Scoot side just because they already have Shaden Sharp, and like I kind of like Shaden, and the idea of having that backcourt just locking it in for the next 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
And then knowing you're going to probably be bad, but you don't really have to worry about it because that pick I think Chicago has it right now, it's always going to be lottery protected. So like you're in a good situation. You're set up well to kind of play this lottery game for a few years. I don't know if they have the appetite for that. And I get that like Dame he is huge here in Portland. So I get why they are so reluctant to do that. But that is the juiciest one that I had heard proposed so far.
I like that. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I could see that.
Okay. I need to ask you one more question. I need to know about Jarris Walker and your thought of him in Oklahoma City. We have a dedicated listener, Sportsfan 405, who tweets at me almost every day about Jarris Walker. And so thoughts on Jarris Walker, thoughts on his fit with the Thunder.
Oh yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. I don't typically mock him to the Thunder because I can't imagine he falls to number 12. Maybe this is a guy who you package some assets to go and get, but I like him a lot. Former 5-star recruit. He's like 6'9", has like a 7'2" wingspan. I think he's a really good kind of playmaker for his position. He's very smart, really good 3-point shooter. Physically, like just insane for just like his. This feels weird to say, but like his body is impressive. He's very like physically mature for a 19-year-old. Like he just does not look like a 19-year-old. I think just profiles perfectly as someone who can be like a NBA power forward and a really productive one for a long time. I like his defense. To me, I think there's really no holes in his game. So yeah, shout out to the listener there. Keep asking about Jarris Walker. I'm very excited about him.
Al, do you have anything else?
No, I think I have exhausted all my questions.
Okay. Yeah, we've gone over an hour. So go follow Kyle on Twitter at Kyle the Boone on Twitter and read his stuff at cbssports.com. Is there anything else that you would like to promote, Kyle, before we go?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, go to cbssports.com. I have a mock draft up somewhere on the site that you can probably find. And then throughout the week, I'll do some like notebooks and maybe some other takeaways and stuff from the combine. But yeah, that's it. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us. Hope you guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you guys again on Friday.